Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. What I'm gonna do in this 30 or 45 minutes, I'm Martin, and this is gonna be kind of like a theoretical lecture, a brief one, I hope so. And what I would like to talk about, or what I would like to focus on, is kind of what we are living in, the dream of, as you can see, visual synchronization via screens in real time. So yeah, this is a really nice slide, but in the next one, I would like to start by a short detour, like a historical one. Maybe you know this picture. Since the late 70s of the 19th century, which is 1879, reports on the emergence and development of new apparatus for remote or electronic vision, or seen by electricity, as it's been said, appear in popular magazines and newspapers in various countries, not only in England, but in the USA. In December 1879, an illustration entitled Edison Telephonoscope, as you can see on a picture, appeared in the satirical magazine Punch, and it was illustrated by George Dumarie. In the picture, an elderly, economical, well-off couple sit in armchair in front of a large screen, with both the men and women holding talking sticks, while a view of the scene unfolding on Ceylon opens before them. Men and women playing tennis in a small garden, maids look after children, and in the left part of the scene, as you can see, a young woman stands with a small speaker looking directly at her parents, who, before going to sleep, make daily contact with her daughter across space and time in the form of instant communication via telephonoscope, or, as it has been called, electric camera obscura. The conversation, as you can see, is very banal. The father asks his daughter to move closer to the machine because he wants to whisper something to her. He asks who one of the girls playing tennis is, and the daughter replies that the girl in question has just arrived from England, and once they have finished their tennis match, she is happy to introduce her to the father. This picture also illustrates technology, the telephonoscope, as a perfectly ordinary device that allows one to see and hear at a distance as a part of a daily routine where talking to loved ones does not necessarily mean dealing with serious issues, but simply gossiping. The telephonoscope, which is portrayed here by, like I said, Marie, as a technology based on the convergence of Bell's telephone and Edison phonograph. Edison, of course, did not patent the telephonoscope. No such device existed, in fact. But at the time, he was working on improving the microphone for the telephone and the light bulb. But rumors that Bell had invented a distance vision apparatus and that Tesla was working on a similar device gradually begin to spread not only through the scientific community, but also through the popular technological imaginary. Edison, as you know, was nicknamed Wizard of Menlo Park. And in 1889, he told reporters that they could look forward to an apparatus that would make it possible not only to talk to another person on a telephone, but also to see them when they talked. Of course, Edison, who that same year patented a moving image device called kinetoscope, that was designed for only one viewer, thus embodying the topoy of a peep show view, never delivered a machine for seeing into the distance. Despite this, two satirical magazines picked up the tech guru's statement. One of them was again a well-known Punch. On the 3rd of July, 1881, a cartoon appeared in it with a short text called Professor Goa Edison's Latest, which described a fictional conversation between a patient and a doctor. The patient is less than enthusiastic about weighing a trip to London, so the doctor refers him to Professor Goa Edison's latest invention, the so-called far sight machine. This is a small box resembling a cabinet camera or camera obscura, from which a small peephole emerges and is connected by a cable with a second machine in front of patient with his back to him, stands observing himself in a mirror, and the doctor views the whole scene in present tense, present time. The apparatus must also be connected to a microphone so that the conversation can be heard, that the doctor can listen to the patient's chest, for example, and rule out various diseases. 2 weeks later, Fun magazine publishes a 3-strip comics, which, in real reference to Edison's interview and the punch story, is titled Go Edison's Real Latest, and depicts the same device as punch, only in a different setting. The boxer stares directly in the apparatus as he advances and dodges. The same boxer is still on his feet, but a black eye is spreading across his face. The caption pokes fun at the far touch machine, which belongs to the past because today's invention is more sophisticated. As satirical as both media contents are, they did not harm Edison in any way. On the contrary, they disseminated awareness of his endeavors while helping him to increase his economic and social capital, maintain his position as a technological visionary, and keep the technological imaginary of the time in suspense as to when he would see that promise seen at a distance. The man of the future, as you can see here, will be or already is a cosmopolitan sea man surrounded by a whole series of apparatuses that cannot be understood primarily like extensions, but as environment that embody the man and the man embodies them. Fast forward 60 years or 70 years. December 9th, 1968, Douglas Engelbart changed the future of computing in his presentation at the Fall Joint Computer Conference in San Francisco. He introduced the so-called online system, which he developed with his colleagues at Stanford Research Institute. The 100-minute lecture later became known as the mother of all demons. Engelbart demonstrated live text editing, for example, on a cathode-ray tube monitor, hyperlinked documents already. The computer mouse, the famous computer mouse, is introduced here in 1968. Networked interaction, video conferencing, and the idea of a personal computer with a display screen. What is interesting, or what was also interesting, as Chris Paulson writes, was that Engelbart sat on a stage facing a packed 100,000-seat auditorium. He addressed the crowd via a 222 by 18-foot screen displaying a live video image of him at the computer workstation. An ADA4 video projector, which they used, borrowed from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration from NASA, and networked by the ARPA, Advanced Research Project Agency, beamed the high-resolution image across the lecture hall while a team of assistants were at the lab in Menlo Park, mentioned, remotely controlling and choreographing the images on screen. When Engelbart pointed at the screen, he did not just point into the camera and the audience. He pointed at the interface that had suddenly materialized before his eyes. This lecture, the lecture about telepresent computers, etc., happened in the context of a famous paper written by J.C.R. Licklider from the 1960s, which was called Man-Computer Symbiosis, which defines the concept of symbiosis as an intimate union of two distinct organisms. The description, the designation of the computer as an organism, is to some extent a constant reflection of the relationship between a man and machine, culminating, as we will see, in cyberpunk. Licklider sees the fundamental potential of human-computer symbiosis in the possibility of accelerating processes of computation and decision-making. This will be achieved when the computer is not a medium for formulating results or problems, but is capable of creative thinking. Once this situation occurs, man and computer will be able to act and control the environment without depending on preset and therefore limited programs. The contemporary 21st century is moving in in a somewhat different direction. The neural networks, large language models, etc., are an ideal example of the fact that humans or people are not even needed as operators. And not only that, Engelbart's presentation from 1968 took place less than a year before the launch of ARPANET, the military network connected to US universities and military bases, with the logic being that if the network was attacked, individual nodes could be isolated and the network would still be functional. But it was especially in the mid-1980s that the dream of synchronicity began to materialize. This was especially in the context of the so-called cyberpunk literary movement, or movies you all know, that consolidated in the 1980s. In this respect, we could understand the authors of the cyberpunk as prophets of the present, as visionaries whose bulk predictions have been fulfilled in a sense. Their vision, phantasmatic one of course, of the functioning of future society and the impossibility of a precise distinction between the organic and the inorganic have been actualized. The technological, biological becoming one, and in contemporary times, it's much more clear that we are all, in a sense, cyborgs. Cyberpunk, the movies, the sci-fi, the literary works, is characterized by the thematization of the human, technology, and media relationship, both in the alternative, we would say dystopian present, and in the alternative, we would say dystopian future, which is based on the ubiquity of digital technologies as we live in, the rationalization and mechanization of a whole range of human activities, and a constant control of movement in space and cyberspace through the tracking of digital traces. The authors of cyberpunk propose the character of the network as a field in which information and data about users are accumulated. I suppose you all know the famous novel by William Gibson, The Neuromancer. And in Neuromancer, there is the first definition of cyberspace ever. As Neuromancer says, or as it is written in Neuromancer, cyberspace, a consensual hallucination experienced daily by billions of legitimate operators in every nation, by children learning mathematical concepts, a graphic representation of data abstracted from the memory of every computer in human society, unimaginable complexity, lines of light stretching across the mind space, clusters and constellations of data, end of quote. So the cyberspace, as it presented in the mid-1980s, is not a clear structure, but a rhizomatic interweaving of fantasies and desires, a complexity, unimaginable complexity, that is difficult to penetrate, which takes on the character of a amorphous, dematerialized race that always illuminate a certain part of a space. Here we encounter the motif of a visual expression of the graphic user environment or interface or screens. There is another famous novel. Novel written by Neil Stephenson, which is called Snow, from 1992, I think. And in this novel, the Snow, we can see the definition of a virtual space or cyberspace, which is there called metaverse, as you know it from the Facebook and Zuckerberg now. But it appeared in this like 35 years old piece. Like Stephenson says about metaverse, like everything in reality, the street is under construction. They can build buildings, parks, billboards, and things that don't exist in reality, like a giant light show in the sky, special districts, where the rules of three-dimensional space-time do not apply, or combat zones where people can walk around, chase each other, and kill each other. The only difference is that the street doesn't really exist. It's just a graphic protocol written on a piece of paper somewhere, and therefore, none of these things are really happening. Instead, they are software programs that are available to the public over a worldwide fiber optic network. The main protagonist of the Neal Stephenson Snow, Umi, lives in the metaverse, owns a house there. In reality, he doesn't own a house. And he carries out various operations. He's kind of a hacker and is involved in a number of financial machinations. He is a renowned fighter in the metaverse, while in reality, he occupies a small space with his roommate. All he cares about is the possibility of joining metaverse. One theoretician, Mark Doisy, also describes the basic features of the novel very accurately, noting that the characters in the book understand the world through concepts that blur, rearrange, and utterly dissolve the boundaries between the software, hardware, and the body, between living and computer systems. Status in these worlds is tied to technical skills and resources. The more advanced the device, the faster the network connection, the more skilled you are as a software architect and engineer, the higher you are on a social ladder. At the top of the pyramid are computer hackers, those who can actually write code. It is no coincidence that the last section of Gibson's Neuromancer is carried by an absolute whipping away of the distinction between the reality and the cyberspace or virtual reality. The hallucinatory expression makes it almost impossible for the reader to orient what events are taking place in which space. French philosopher Gilles Deleuze writes that with the existence of the automata of calculation and thought, with regulation and feedback, electronic and digital automata, a new informatic and cybernetic race is emerging. At the same time, the power has inverted its pattern, and instead of converging towards a single and mysterious leader, the inspirer of dreams and commander of action, it has become diluted in an information network in which decision makers control the management. The decision makers or operators of the cyberspace with expert knowledge of information technology or IT and computer networks play a dominant role because, unlike ordinary users from whom technological devices are black boxes, as we could say, of which they have no idea of the internal layout and mechanisms, they are able to redesign the hardware and software of the automata with which they work and to which they are connected. We all have our digital doppelganger, whether we are talking about being on social media or just having a digital persona that is continuously shaped by our web browsing history. And into all of this, there are VTubers or digital beings on various platforms producing content for consumption. William Gibson anticipated this moment as well, namely in his novel Idoro. Idoro is a personality construct, a congeries of software agents, the creation of information designers, a synesthesion. Idoro is a pure form of AI, as in the movie Her, in which Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with artificial intelligence. Idoro is not easy to resist the lure of digital beings whose existence is haunting and unheimlich. So, what about now? In 1997, a film by David Cronenberg called Existence was released. Antenna Research Corporation presents a new type of virtual reality game created by the world's best designer, Allegra, to a few dozen users in a small theater. The man on the stage not only introduces Electra to the applause of the attendees, but also selects 12 test subjects to be connected via their bioport to Allegra's spot containing the only original of the game in question, unsurprisingly called Existence. A young man enters the room, passes a security check, pulls out a strange-looking gun, as you can see in the picture, shoots the designer, and is subsequently killed. The Allegra survives, and along with the guard at the entrance, who is a young PR and marketing professional, runs away from the hall and makes its escape. She can't be sure that Antenna Research isn't behind the assassination attempt. After all, the game itself cost $38 million to develop. Her main goal, besides saving her own life, is to find out the biopod, which is on the second picture, is find out if the biopod is still functional. So she convinces her new companion, the PR and marketing professional, to have a bioport installed in his body in a rundown garage, hook up to the pod and get a taste of her new game. Electra's biopod is described as an animal that has been grown from fertilized amphibian eggs filled with synthetic DNA, having no battery as it takes its energy from a veteran human body. Michael, the PR marketing professional, and Allegra get in the game. After a few escapades, Michael wants to leave the game's virtual space because he experiences that he is a little disconnected from real life, as if he were losing touch with the structure of the world. Allegra argues that real life is very boring, and Michael counters, after briefly disconnecting from the game, "I'm not sure that VR is real at all. It feels like a game." They connect back to the Existence. Misunderstandings begin to pile up. Paranoia thickens as the gaming world comes into conflict with another faction, an faction of realists who want to destroy the biopod because they are convinced of perniciousness of virtual gaming. Michael repeatedly comments of this confusion with the whole setting, saying that it is a game where the rules are hard to explain and the lenses are probably non-existent, and where anything can kill us. But doesn't he describe, as Allegra mentions, real life? In the penultimate scene of the film, Michael finally tries in the game to kill Allegra because he's part of the realist faction. Allegra instead takes Michael's life and screams frenetically if she has therefore already won the game. The play ends, and we find ourselves once again in a theater from the opening of the film. All of the characters in the game setting were trial users, even Allegra and Michael were players. The lead designer, Yevgeny, confides to his assistant that the motive for killing the designer was not of his own mind, that surely it came instead from one of the test subjects. Allegra and Michael say, "Thanks, Yevgeny, they are now convinced that he is the best designer in the world." However, the change in atmosphere comes rather through as Allegra asks, "Don't you think you must suffer for all the damage you have done and intend to do to the human race?" Michael nods, "Yes, don't you think the best designer should be punished for creating the most effective deformation of reality?" Yevgeny is clearly confused. Allegra and Michael shoot him, chanting the realist slogan in the process. The others watch them with interest but are in no way offended. They are basically acting like NPCs from the game. As they leave the hall, Allegra and Michael run into one of the users who was also a character in the game. They pull out a gun. The frightened man just asks them, "Hey, tell me the truth. Are we still in the game?" The end credits begin to roll across the screen. People are already and slowly becoming new bodies. After all, there are only a minority of those in the world who do not have a bioport installed in the spine, which allows them to move in countless virtual worlds. A gameport is artificially formed entity medium that contains aspects of the corporeal animal and is full of synthetic DNA and cannot exist without human power, making one a cyborg. And once in a game, one loses touch with normal life and suffers from a constant desire to be connected in a game. In fact, Existence, the movie, still operates with the idea and assumption, however vague, of the existence of the ordinary world. For example, you know maybe the TV show called Peripheral from 2022, which operates with a similar motive, where a young virtual reality tester is transported to a whole new world thanks to a new contract and discovers that technology allows her to travel across different space-time, modes, and possible worlds. Or we can consider the second episode of the third season of the show Black Mirror called Trial, where a young traveler who runs into financial problems decides to take part in a test of a new game, where he has to undergo a minor medical procedure to make the connection to the system unproblematic. The subsequent development of the plot is not difficult to imagine. Plain and simple, the clear and distinct distinction between virtual reality and everyday reality is lost. These examples, all these examples, are telling us something about the connection between the man, technology, and the AI or artificial intelligence. If you look at the media representation of AI, so it articulates within an explicit techno-pessimism, mainly with explicit techno-pessimism. The classic motif in films and television series is, of course, the portrayal of AI as a threat to all humanity, with artificial intelligence being far more rational than humans, and the perfectly rational option being the extermination of all humanity. Whether we are thinking of Kubrick's Space Odyssey, middle in the picture, Terminator, no, I need your shoes, your jacket, and your motorcycle, or the game System Shock, which is left on the picture, where an artificial intelligence called Shodan declares itself a god. This is a motif of machine rebellion, where the threat of the apocalypse or the destruction of the world is very real. On the other hand, techno-optimism emphasizes the role of AI, especially in variants of transhumanism, so-called transhumanism, as enhancing humans and pushing the limits of human capabilities. The software is an invisible glue that ties society together, wrote Lev Manovich 10 years ago. Nowadays, we are constantly confronted with various interfaces, whether driving a car, walking around a city. William Mitchell noted that contemporary cities are basically linked hubs, where people connect into the cyberspace via software and apps. Cronenberg, virtual reality, AI, visualization. All this leads us to the fact that we live in the era of operational images. The Czech-born filmmaker Harun Farocki came up with the definition of these so-called operational images. These are images that are produced by machines and read by machines, to then be translated to the human eye. Consider, for example, the images produced on a computer monitor, which show the state of the ship, for example, a spaceship, its functionality, or the failure of certain systems. The operator can very easily select which sector he wants to visualize, using close-up in the most intimate detail, while information about fuel levels, oxygen levels, and the nature of the crew members widely sign flash on the one side of the screen, like in a movies about sci-fi. And it doesn't matter whether it's a routine check or an emergency situation. Based on the images, a human operator is able to give the computer orders for action, can remotely monitor a line of machines trying to repair damaged engine turbines and so on, like in the movie Sunshine from 2007. But all of these visualizations are essentially digital modular code sequences to which the machines primarily respond, and what is visible to the human operator is already a translation, a transformation of the data into a visual form that is readable to the human eye. So, it's a question of readability and visibility in general, or rather, the current world is based on data transformation and data dissemination and production, with data encoding not only being a matter for humans, but especially for computers and AI. And only then is data translated for humans. consider topics such as machine vision technologies, machine learning process, face recognition. All of this is a matter of software programs and their operationalization. Even the normal editing of an image that we post on social media is a matter of algorithms and automation of individual tasks. In game design and design in general, AI plays, I would say, an absolutely vital role in building virtual worlds. As early as the 1990s, there were games whose environments were procedurally generated. Or rather, each new replay through the game world was different. And this was because a different map was generated, locations changed, locations of objects and enemies changed. And of course, in graphic design, using prompts and commands, it's possible to generate environments that are not necessarily procedural. 3D can be auto-generated, as can music, sound effects, and an AI can write in-game dialogue, auto-generate quests, mainly the side ones. Not only that, the AI can test the game itself, figuring out possible complications in the design and its functionality. In all of these cases, the point is that AI becomes an important tool for creation, allowing human invention to be translated into images and presenting a unique world full of plethora of events and experiences to the user. Let's move on from the notion of AI as a tool to marking its intrinsically productive potential. Because AI is capable of dealing with vast amounts of data, let's stick with computer games in wrapping up and the very interesting trend of using prompts and commands that are very detailed, not to only translate computer games into movies, but into movies with a specific genre in a specific period. The examples are the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne series, etc. And these movies are made by the Sora AI. At the same time, it is transformed into the 1960s gothic horror or fantasy fiction, or we can just find out another, the Bloodborne, for example. Which is the creativity of the humans produced and enhanced by the AI to produce a new kind of images without needing a really big economical capital. AI here thus functions as a creative tool that works with human genres, artistic genres, with human creations, which it dually and inventively transforms into a new type of a product. It is, in a sense, these examples, it is in a sense, a future described already by Engelbart and others from the beginning of the lecture. Now, thank you for your attention. It's the end.
Thank you very much, Martin, for the talk. I start immediately like, are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. There's because it was really, I would say, filled with lots of data and information. In the meantime, maybe can we get a microphone here? Ah, yeah, it's already here. Perfect. Let's start with the audience questions now.
Hello. I have a simple question. What are the possibilities of us being in the Matrix?
Well, I can quote one famous French theoretician who said, well, The Matrix is an ideal film produced by Matrix about Matrix. You can never know. I mean, the difference between taking the blue one and the red one pill, what difference does it make? You are still in the game, like in the existence. You know, you don't know. Because, I mean, if you look around the world and you just meet people, in a lot of cases, you get the idea that they are acting like NPCs from a computer game. You can never know.
Thank you.
I have a different question, or from a different perspective, or like, you know, there's a huge percentage of people in the audience from the creative industry, and what do you think? Like, what should be the key questions that creative creatives should be asking about AI and computational technology in the upcoming decade? Is it like, is it just about transformation of our jobs, or
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
what
Yeah,
is
I mean,
your point of view?
definitely there is a question about economics and the jobs, etc. On the other hand, I think that the other question we can ask is what is my, I mean, human role in a process of creation, something. It doesn't necessarily lead to the fact that if I just use some code or if I just develop some code or prompt, etc., that I am not the author of the work. Of course, I am. So that's the second one, the case of the authorship, like okay, so I am not doing it with my paper or pencil and then something's gonna happen, but I'm doing it with in cooperation with the computer, like was the idea in the 60s. Another question I would say about the creative industries or creativity is, for me, how much do you need to know about the technology? I mean, definitely you need to know more than an ordinary human. I mean, you need to know more than me, for example, or than someone you meet in a bar. Yes, exactly. But in a sense, if we are talking about the neural systems or large language models, they are basically a black box. You can just inherently interpret some of the motion, some of the procedures, etc., etc. But I am not really sure if it's entirely possible to gain the knowledge of the complexity we are living in, and it leads to the design as well. But I'm not sure if I'm right. I think I'm not.
All right. Going back to the neuromancer that you mentioned there,
Yeah.
a great reference, as we're going also tomorrow see a bit of illustration version of this in another talk. I want to ask, like, what would be your suggestion for a literature that is, a current one, that we might be then dealing with the content in the next decade, that, as Neuromancer said, the boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. I can't read anymore, because that's what I do for a living. On the other hand, I like to watch a lot of movies and TV shows. I think really a nice one maybe is a three-body problem, for example. Altered carbon, definitely for me too. So I would just suggest look at the movies, because I am not really sure if there is any kind of a really good sci-fi right now to read. But like I said, I haven't read anything which is not work like for 5 years, 6 years. And I'm ashamed of that, of course.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
No, I mean, sorry.
All right.
One more thing
Right.
about the movies.
Yeah, go ahead.
Watch Cronenberg. The movies
Okay.
from Cronenberg. You know his fly. The man becomes a fly. He's kind of perplexed by it, etc., etc. But not only the existence from the 1997, but the Videodrome from the late 80s is a really great piece. And the last one of his I don't remember the name right now. But Cronenberg is a kind of a visionary of new technologies, from television to digital era or virtual reality, maybe.
Right. Cool. Do we have any more questions? If not, then thank you very much once for the talk and lecture.